Welcome to this bioenergy healing talk on moving with the ups and downs of energy cycles. I'm Michael Dalton. I've been practicing bioenergy healing for over 30 years. And our talk tonight is about understanding the cycles that bring our energy up and the cycles that bring our energy down. Sorry, I'm just adding some people in here. And how to understand those cycles and move with the energy of those cycles, both for healing and for other things in our lives as well. Like there's these, we might say there's these natural cycles that when we move with them, we make very little effort and we get a lot further. And then there's other cycles that I guess I've come to see them more as patterns. So these patterns that we repeat, and some of the patterns that we repeat are not always healthy cycles. Sometimes we're repeating the same patterns over and over, versus when we get on to good cycles of energy, we often, as I said, will get a lot further with a lot less effort. And healing is like that too. There's cycles that we go through with healing, and then there's other people who are just repeating patterns and not actually going into a healing cycle. So when people are just repeating patterns, they get to relive or re-experience something over and over and over again. So I kind of, sometimes I joke about that on my courses, is like, if you're driving a car and you're driving around a roundabout, just because you're in motion doesn't mean that you're getting anywhere. So if you keep driving around the roundabout, yeah, you're in motion and you have the sensation that you're moving, that you're making progress. But when you kind of look at it from a bigger perspective, you're just going around in circles. And indeed, both for healing and for our life, sometimes we do that. And sometimes we do it unconsciously. We're not even aware that we're doing it, right? So we have these unconscious patterns that we repeat. And so I thought I'd introduce this kind of concept of cycles tonight, insofar as that everything moves in energy waves, rhythms, patterns, and cycles. So like everything moves. We have everything from day and night to the seasons to the tides. Everything moves in these natural cycles, natural rhythms. We have the cycle of day and the cycle of night. And then you have a circadian rhythms in your body that, like at nighttime, you kind of have that feeling to go to sleep, and during the day you wake up and you have more of your energy during the day. So we have these natural rhythms that we will fall into, right? Like rhythms, sorry, just adding more people here. So we have these natural rhythms that take place. And so in terms of like healing, though, there's a difference between the rhythms and the cycles versus the patterns. So patterns are sometimes we more like repeat the same patterns rather than going through the same cycle. So the repeating the same pattern could be having the same reaction over and over. So in healing, we often look at it as one of the ways that you can tell a person is growing with their healing is they're less reactive and more responsive. That makes sense, right? So we start to pull away from just reacting to stuff. Usually when we're just in a reaction, it's very much unconscious. So it's more like we're just reacting to something and we're doing it unconsciously. We're not necessarily thinking about it and changing our response. So reactionary, when we're reactionary, we might get triggered very easy. Someone says something to you, you get triggered. That's often seen as reactionary. And I often think like a good test of your healing is the less triggered you are, maybe the better you're doing with your healing process, right? Like, so the more we get triggered, it's a lot of times it's our wounding from childhood. So the stuff that we carry forward. And usually I always say, like, even when you think of even someone in traffic, if someone gets into some road rage, it's never somebody cutting them off. It's never the road rage that's the problem. It's, something that happened maybe when they were 5 years of age, and that adult immediately goes back to that childhood trauma and then becomes reactionary, right? So whenever something triggers them, they go to that reactionary place. So I kind of see that as more the pattern versus the cycles. So I think that there's cycles of things that will keep coming to the surface in order for us to experience things. So there's these natural cycles, just like we get to experience the cycle of day and night, every 24 hours, we get to experience the cycle of that. We also get to cycle through, I would say, our chakra system. So we have these 7 energy points in the body: the root chakra, the sacral chakra, the solar plexus chakra, the heart chakra, the throat chakra, the brow chakra, and the crown chakra. And these are 7 major energy points in the body that contribute to our health and well-being. And as the energy moves and flows and circulates through the chakras, we tend to be healthy. But sometimes we'll hold patterns of emotion, old emotion or trauma, will hold patterns in specific chakras and specific energy points in the body. And what I found is that we'll cycle through the different chakras at different times. It's like energetically, we'll cycle around so that we have an opportunity to work the trauma out of our chakras, to work the trauma out of different areas of our body. So it's like it'll cycle around again for us to process stuff. And I often say it this way: it's like your soul has one purpose, right? Which is to free you. That's the purpose of your soul, to free you, to liberate you. It doesn't care if you're triggered. It doesn't care if you're upset. It doesn't care if you're in a happy and loving relationship or you're single. It doesn't care if you're rich or poor. Your soul has one purpose: to free you, to liberate you from suffering. I genuinely believe it's to free us from our suffering. And so, there's a concept that suffering we do to ourselves, right? Like we do it to ourselves. And so I've seen over the last 30 years doing energy healing with people that as people heal the different energy points in their bodies, these different chakras, that the energy that is going to their wounding or trauma returns to them. The triggers dissipate, the triggers dissolve, and the energy that they were losing returns to their body. It returns to their vitality. And people become more, I would say, more complete within themselves. It's like just adding someone here. They find more of themselves again. And so in so many ways, people, we can lose ourselves. We lose ourselves to relationships or jobs or other people, and we can come out of our authenticity and we can come out of our alignment with our true self. And so as a person goes into healing, they come back into that natural cycle of authentic, because even that is a cycle, because authenticity will always cycle around to us again. Things like, authenticity, which is us about living in alignment or living in truth, will always cycle back around. And one of the things that happens that I noticed too is that there's always an opportunity for the shadow part of ourselves to cycle around. So the unresolved wounds, the unresolved stuff that we haven't dealt with, you don't even need to go looking for it. It's gonna come looking for you, right? Like that's what I find when people say, "Oh, I really need to work on this past stuff." I'm like, "No, you don't. It'll find you. Don't you worry." You just have to be ready for when it finds you, that you're ready to receive it, right? Like you're ready to receive the wounds as they come in, to breathe into them, to feel into them, to integrate them. When we integrate them, when we ground them, then we complete the cycle of them. And then that energy returns back to us. And that energy comes in each one of the chakras. As I said, there's 7 chakras. The energy then can shift from what we call the horizontal energy back into the vertical energy. So as each one of the chakras return to the vertical flow, our energy comes into our what we would call in bioenergy our alignment or atonement, your energy comes back into the vertical flow, which is basically at the end of the day is love, right? We're all returning to love. It sounds great, but that's really what it is, you know, for want of a better name to call it. Like authenticity is us returning to alignment, to love, to the truth of who we are. And we can cover it up and we can dismiss it and we can find multiple different ways to talk about it. But that's really when you strip everything away, you know, and you breathe and you slow down and you take everything away, it's like what remains is love. That's who we are. That's what we are. And that's what we're returning to. But we've kind of, in some ways, I think, covered ourselves up quite well as a way of disconnecting ourselves from our true source of who we are. And so our soul's purpose is to bring us back into this journey of remembering who we are, waking up who we are. And I think there's nothing like a bit of chaos in the world for us to question our life and question things and question what we're doing with our life. But the cycles of energy, as I said, there's these cycles that come around, and two of the cycles you can kind of think of as, one is like an outward moving cycle and one is an inward moving cycle. So just like you're breathing, right? Like when you breathe, there's an inward cycle of breath, and then when you breathe out, there's an outward cycle of breath, right? So you always have these opposites, right? So just as we have day and night, the tides go in, the tides go out, you know, we have these opposite effects, right? The yin and yang, the opposing energy. It's not good and bad, it's just the opposite. They're opposing energy. So just as you have heat, you have cold, you have in, you have out. So we have these cycles where we go inwards, and then we have cycles where we go outwards. So I would say, like, the rising cycle is one where, as we find these rising cycles of energy, it's often an opportunity to see things in a different perspective, to put energy out into the world. So a rising cycle of energy, we tend to feel more expressive. The throat chakra really opens up, and we have a tendency to want to express ourselves, to want to put something out into the world. So that putting something out of the world is often creativity, right? So the throat chakra is our creative center. And although the sacral chakra, the energy down below, is also the creative center, the sacral chakra is the unconscious creativity. And the difference with the throat is the conscious creativity. So there's a certain cycle of energy that we're in where sometimes we really feel like we need to express ourselves. We need to communicate. We need to contribute in some way to the creativity or the expression of things in our life. And so that's like an outward, that's like the rising cycle or outward cycle where we're putting things out into the world. And then there's the inward cycle. And the inward cycle is a little bit more like, there's times where you might just feel like you want to close off to the world. Does anybody ever experience that, right? Like where you just feel like, feck the world, you know, if there was you'd nearly dig a hole and climb into it, right? I see all the heads nodding. But, you know, sometimes these inward cycles, we want to shut off and we want to go inwards. And they're usually about reflection. They're usually about like evaluating ourselves, evaluating life, evaluating the shadow and our light, and processing stuff. And it's often, in fairness, it's often where there's a lot of growth is in those downward cycles, in those reflective cycles. It's, for a lot of times people think like it's like nothing's happening or not that much is moving. But you know, I've always thought like even an hour of inner work is worth 7 hours of outer work. Like when people take time to go inwards and do even a little bit of inner work, not even an hour, but even doing a few minutes of inner work, the impact of it in your life is so profound that when one actually takes the time to reflect and go inwards, the impact of that really helps to change patterns and free us from patterns in our life. So in terms of these natural cycles, as I would say, we would have these rises and falls of energy. And so how do you know if you're in a rising tide or a falling tide? Or how do you know you're not just like stuck in an old pattern, repeating the old pattern, telling yourself, well, I'm just taking it easy, I'm resting. Look, I'd be the first one to say that in healing, resting is so important. It's so important to rest. It's so important to slow down. Anyone who's worked on me with any of the trainings, any of the courses, I'm always like, it's so important that we slow down, right? Because the present moment is here. It's not something that we're chasing in the future. So it's always slowing down to fully take in everything that's already here now. At the same time as that, like slowing down and really taking in, receiving the present, sometimes we're in not so much a slow down cycle of reflection, but sometimes we're just stuck, right? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Sometimes you're just stuck, and sometimes not moving doesn't mean like that you're resting. Sometimes like you can feel restless, right? Not moving. You can feel like that things aren't flowing, right? Like you'll even say it to yourself, right? You'll say like, I feel stuck. I feel that things are not flowing, things are not moving. And when you're in that state, right? Like there's a difference between stillness. And stillness is beautiful, my friends, right? I mean, people practice meditation to find stillness. Yoga, Tai Chi, there's moments. There's a beautiful moment in Savasana at the end of your yoga practice where you get to lie down in the stillness. That's always my favorite exercise in yoga. But there's this moment at the end of stillness after you work hard, and then you get a moment in stillness, and it's the most beautiful moment, right? But life is like that. There's these moments where we find absolute stillness. It's a godsend. It's connection to all that is. It can be profound in the emptiness is so full with everything, right? But that's not to confuse like that stillness and that fullness of stillness with being stuck, with not moving, with not flowing. And so in terms of like energy, as I mentioned, like we all have this energy field around our body. The energy flows and moves through the organs, tissue, cells, blood, bones, through the chakras. And when energy is flowing and moving, we tend to be healthy. We tend to be well. When energy is flowing through the root chakra, we tend to be like physically taking care of ourselves, right? Like we take care of ourselves, we eat well, you dress, you wash, you clean your home. It's very basic stuff, you pay your bills. Like when the root chakra is doing well, we tend to take care of ourselves. With the sacral chakra, when the sacral chakra is flowing, we tend to be moving. We tend to it's easy for us to move. It's easier for us to do things, to feel enjoyment for things, to laugh at things, to kind of like, you even heard this expression, to go with the flow. When the sacral chakra is flowing, we tend to be quite adaptable, right? Like a river adapts to wherever it's going, right? It's super adaptable. When the sacral chakra is not flowing very well, we tend to be rigid. We tend to be stuck. Now, the sacral chakra actually represents the sexual center, but so, sometimes people will be stuck on the sexual level too, right? But it's not just the sexual level. It's just simply, it's the unconscious creativity. So it's our capacity to align ourselves with the natural cycles, with the natural flow and movement and creative process. So in terms of like energy flowing through the chakras, when energy is flowing through the sacral, we tend to, like I said, we tend to be adaptable, we tend to move easily. And then it flows into the solar plexus, which is the power center, the fire center. The solar plexus is very much our passion center. It's our passion to do things, to be active, to you know, not to have to do something, but to want to do something. I always say that's a good, healthy solar plexus. Like whenever we feel like we have to do something, it's amazing how the solar plexus will shut down. Like you watch kids, when you try to force them to do something, no, they don't want to do it. I don't think that changes as we get older. I think whenever we feel pushed into doing something, if you feel like forced or pushed to doing something, it's not uncommon that your solar plexus starts kicking up a fuss. This is where people have accidents, injuries, they bang their knee, their elbow. This is all related to the solar plexus. It's ways that people have of letting, it's like a passive anger, right? Like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then they bang their elbow or their knee, which is the elbows and knees are related to the solar plexus. So this solar plexus chakra, when the energy is flowing and moving and in the natural cycle, we tend to be able to say yes to what we want and no to what we don't want. And I would say the best way of understanding the flow of the solar plexus is that we don't feel manipulated. We feel like that we have a sense of freedom, a sense of sovereignty, a sense of choice, right? Like we get to choose, right? That we're in the driving seat, But whenever we feel pushed or forced in whatever way, whether that's relationship, work, medical, banking, jobs, whatever it might be, governmental things, whenever people feel like people know, like deep down in your intuitive alignment of all it is, people know when they're being manipulated. People know when they're being tricked or pushed out of alignment or forced or coerced. And it doesn't feel right in your fire center, in your inner energy, in your inner center. And these are some of the things like that, after working with people for 30 years, it's like, these are the things that make people sick, right? This is why, when I say like, when we're doing things that we don't want to do, it makes you sick. Well, this is the kind of breaking it down a little bit for you into the kind of cycles and patterns that we have. So like if you're in a pattern of continuously doing something for someone that you don't want to do, you may feel like that there's a sense of like losing yourself. There's a sense of like, some people will experience like tiredness or exhaustion, and there's nothing like tiredness or exhaustion to let you know that you're not happy with what you're doing. It's your body way of saying no. No, right? Like your body's saying no, and it's amazing how people won't get that. Like it's amazing how when people have problems with their shoulders, they won't realize that they're taking on too much responsibility. When there's problems with their eyes, there's things that they don't want to look at. When there's problems with their ears, there's things that they don't want to listen to. When there's problems with their stomach, their digestive system, there's things that they can't swallow. There's things that they can't digest. There's things that they can't assimilate. The things that they can't process, right? So just like the digestive system might not be processing food very well, it's usually that the person is not processing a situation. They're not assimilating the situation that they're in because it doesn't feel right. And what doesn't feel right? The moment we feel manipulated, we come out of alignment. The moment we feel we're being pulled or pushed, we come out of alignment. And so what's healing, my friends? Well, healing is always simply getting out of the way and returning back to alignment. That's healing is love, right? So love is the core of our being, right? It's authenticness, acting from our true self, our authentic self, our real self. And so when we're acting from that true self, authentic self, again, we tend to be healthy. We tend to be well. We tend to align. And in that aligning, we tend to restore, replenish, and heal. So sometimes people say, well, Michael, I've been sick for a few years. How do I get better? Well, we got to look at, where are you out of alignment? Where are you out of the natural cycle? See, the earth and our bodies are in these natural rhythms, these natural cycles together, and when we're living in harmony with the earth, when we're living in harmony with Mother Nature, when we're living in harmony with the cosmos, and we're in this harmonious relationship, we tend to be healthy. And so when we're not in harmonious relationship, in bioenergy, we say there's 3 relationships: your relationship with yourself, your relationship with nature, and then our relationship with each other. And that's why healing is very much about restoring our relationship with the self, right? As we restore the relationship with the self and we come into alignment with nature, then it's easier for us to restore the relationships with other people. But if we're trying to fix relationships with other people and we're not in a harmonious relationship with ourselves, we're probably going to tell other people what they want to hear or do what we think they want done rather than what feels right for us. And for a lot of people don't even know what's right for them on the inside, right? People are always looking for other people for advice or support, or always looking for someone else to give them the answers. And really the cycling and the movement and the returning of us into alignment is really about returning back to the intuitive self within, returning back to that natural intuitive person that you are. And I think that everyone is incredibly intuitive. I think that people are naturally intuitive beings. Like, you've no idea literally how intuitive we are. It's just that most people don't listen to it, right? Like, most people don't listen to the intuition. But we call them red flags. How many times did you pick up on a red flag, red signals, like messages that were like, oh, I should have trusted my intuition? We even say that. We say things like, I knew I should have trusted. And there is, like, I don't think intuition is guessing. Intuition is direct knowing. So this brow chakra and crown chakra, when they work together, when the brow chakra and crown chakra work together, that's what the third eye is. So people have heard of the third eye. So when these energy points form, they work together, they form the third eye, which is direct knowing. So it's not something that you're guessing, it's just a knowing. And I believe that we all have access to that direct knowing inside of ourselves. It's just that life is so busy and so chaotic that it's hard to listen to that voice sometimes. But the more we dismiss it, the louder that voice gets. And it starts out as intuition and red flags and signals, and then over time it turns into illness and sickness. And it's not that your body is punishing you in any way, it's your body is communicating to you. Your body is always looking to bring us back into alignment. It's always, just like the soul, it's always looking to bring us back to freedom, which is to free ourselves from the things that are causing us suffering. Boom, right? Our soul has one purpose: to free us from the things that are causing us suffering, And it's not like, I've seen people where they quit their job because they're like, well, my job is taken away from my spirituality. I mean, that's not the solution either, right? Because if you're not working and you're not paying your bills and eating food and taking care of yourself, you're continuously thrown down to the root chakra. Well, what's the root chakra? Survival issues, right? The adrenals kick in and you're in the fight or flight, right? So the tendency for most people is that the cycle of energy that we're in is one of stress, is one of like more sympathetic nervous system. So we're living in a more sympathetic state, trying to deal with all the things that you're trying to deal with. And so I guess like this is why, like in healing, one of the things first thing I always do in a healing session with someone even is just like to slow down. It's just to like, not to rush into the session, but just to sit with them for a moment and to breathe together and just to unhook from the unconsciousness, to unhook from the reactionary, to unhook from the, like there's people that come in for sessions and they're like, oh, I'm tight on time, can we get started? And it's like, no, let's unhook from that. And I really watch people as they come in, and I just wait till I feel like that they're unhooking from not just the traffic, but just from all of it, everything, because we can't listen to what's going on inside. We can't form that inner connection until we disconnect from a little bit of the outer stimulus, the outer noise. And as we close our eyes and we go inwards and we start to breathe, we start to tune into a different type of interconnected web. In bioenergy, we call it the internet, not to be confused with the internet, but the internet is this interconnected web, this connection, this circuitry that we have to the cosmos, this circuitry that we can plug ourselves into Mother Gaia and she communicates to us, that we can plug ourselves into the cosmos and we can download direct knowing. So there's this natural intuitive ability that we all have, not some people have and some people don't. There's no one, I always say too, like there's nobody more spiritual than anybody else. But here's the nugget, my friends. There's also nobody less spiritual than anybody else. We're all made up of the same stuff, the same stardust, the same cosmic magic. And when we slow down and get out of the way, it doesn't matter who you are. If you connect with your breathing, you come into presence. It doesn't matter your culture, your background, your level of training, your age. None of that matters. The moment you slow down your breathing, you disconnect from that sympathetic state and you activate the parasympathetic state. Because when you slow your breathing down, the message that you give your nervous system is everything is okay. Because if you're in a more adrenal state, which is that fight flight, you wouldn't be able to breathe slowly. So when you breathe slowly, it triggers your body and lets your body know that everything is okay, right? So that breathing slow, that disengaging from the reactionary and that slowing down allows us then to connect the circuitry, allows us to connect to what we call in bioenergy the vertical flow of energy, our true essence, which is, I would say, love, right? Boom, love. Whew. So in terms of these cycles of energy, when we are going with the natural cycles of energy, there's growth in those times where we go inwards. And there's growth in those times where we express ourselves. So some cycles of energy, we might find that when we slow down, we might feel like, oh, I want to take some inward time, or you want to slow down and you want to, just, I'm sure we've all felt it, right? There's times where you don't really want to be around other people and you just want time to yourself. And it's nothing wrong with anyone else, but just sometimes you need, I think as a human being, we all do, at least I know I do, but sometimes we need just to disconnect from others and we need to go inwards. We need to slow down. I've always seen that like in healing as integration, right? When we go inwards, that's integration. You have experiences in life and then you slow down, you go inwards and you integrate those experiences. And here's the thing. If you don't integrate, your daily, weekly, monthly experiences, or you don't integrate the events that happen in your week. If you don't integrate them, you're destined to repeat them, right? Any emotion that isn't properly processed in your body, you're destined to keep repeating it, right? But if you have emotion comes up and it's integrated, it grounds, it's a circuitry, literally an electrical circuitry. And that circuitry grounds itself, and a part of you is complete from that circuitry completing. And I think in terms of like, what is it that we're healing? I think in so many ways, we're healing our ancestry. It's literally the gift that each of us does for our family without realizing it or not, that our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they did the best that they could to heal the emotional wounds and trauma, the barbarism that was life at one time, right? That gets carried through the DNA, and that gets passed into us, and we get to carry forward the unhealed wounds of our parents. And I know you're thinking, you for an inheritance you'd like cash or money, but you get instead of the cash and the money, you get to deal and resolve the things that they weren't able to resolve. How beautiful is that? Life has a way of like evolving us into bringing out the best version of ourselves. And that best version is that we take on the wounds of our ancestors, and then we get to heal what they were unable to complete. And the beauty of that is that as we heal those parts of ourselves, that healing goes backwards through time, back to your ancestors that have even passed away, and that they on a level they feel it, on a level they coexist with us right now. And there's a, sometimes you could be on the phone with someone, say you're here and you're on the phone with someone and they're in Australia, and you're here and you're on different time zones and everything, but there's a moment where, I mean, there's someone, Karen's here from Australia. Hi, Karen. But so you have someone in Australia and you have someone here, and they're different, you're far away and across different time zones and all of that, but there's a moment of connection. And in the same way that I've often found in healing, that in healing, time and space is very lucid. It's not as like fixed as we think it is. And there's moments in healing where people are like going in and healing their issues that are in their tissues. And just as they're healing those issues in their tissues, it's like they can have this communication take place between them and their loved ones that have even passed away, loved ones that they're there, but they're not there. It's so bizarre, but it's just like this phone call or this Zoom call. It's like you get to communicate with different people on an energetic level on this internet. It has no restraint of time passed, or no restraint of distance. It has the capacity to bring people into our lives, or energy or patterns into our lives, and to bring us face to face with things that are unresolved or unhealed, or in need of transformation. And so this cycles of healing is when we really come in and accept this now moment, then these natural cycles will feel into this cycle I'm going in, and this is something I'm working on, and this is something I need to resolve. And then there's another cycle of, after that integration, of now wanting to express yourself. I've always found that when people take time and they do some inner work, there's always a great energy of expression that comes after. It's like, because a part of you is restored, then there's this big increase of of expression. And I think that has to do with the creativity, right? Because even with illness, like illness is creative, right? Like illness is creativity internalized rather than expressed, right? So if the body is healed of its ailments, then that creativity has to go somewhere. And so if that creativity doesn't have to go as illness because you're tuning in and listening to your body, then that creativity can manifest in whatever maybe your heart's desire is. And so that's part of the cycles of energy, is that if you're in a rising cycle of energy and for a few moments, you see in your mind what it is that you want to create or manifest, in that rising cycle of energy, and you hold in your mind what it is that you want to manifest, that energy will, the density of that thought becoming dense is so rapid, so fast. And I think we've all maybe experienced that, where there's these moments in your life where things just flow for you. People say you're in the zone, things are flowing. And then there's other times where you just feel like you're stuck and you're pushing, right? So you remember this idea that whenever you feel like you're being pushed into something, it doesn't feel right. So the same is also true that when you push something onto someone else, when you push or force your energy onto someone else, they're going to feel out of alignment. Because in order for you to push someone, it pushes them off their center. And so whenever we feel pushed by any force, whether it's government, medical, boss, your wife, whatever it might be, whenever you feel pushed, think of the pendulum, right? So here's my temporary pendulum. But whenever we're being pushed off alignment, or we're being pulled out of alignment. So where is alignment? Alignment is there in the center. It doesn't take anything for us to be in alignment, right? Alignment is just when we're not acting upon the force from manipulation. When we're accepting the energy exactly how it is, there's no manipulation. But as soon as we start to manipulate, as soon as we start to push or force things onto each other, then we push each other out of alignment. And so what I've come to understand after 30 years of working in healing is that when people are ill or sick, they're usually out of alignment. And when people start healing, they're like, oh, what the hell is happening in my life? It's like your life is crashing. But the reason your life is crashing is because things have to break down. And then when we come back to our center, it's like everything feels like aligned, everything flows, everything is back in alignment, everything flows, right? So to me, well, this is what I always say. Well, when people say, well, what's healing? Well, healing is recognizing that something is pulling or pushing you out, and healing is helping you to let go of it, right? Healing is helping you let go of the things that are pushing and pulling you or holding you, the emotions, the trauma, because it's coming from maybe trauma, wounding, and that wounding, we start to manipulate we even can manipulate ourselves or manipulate each other through our wounding, looking, at the end of the day, what's anybody looking for? Self-love, connection, right? So we look for it through other people. We're looking for love through others. We're looking for acceptance from others. And sometimes we're trying to give other people what it is that we deeply want within ourselves, right? And the more we're trying to, that's what we call that chasing, right? The more you're chasing it from someone else, it's like the more you're chasing acceptance of someone else, the more you're out of alignment, right? And so at the end of the day, when we let go of all of that, where do we find acceptance? Right? Within ourselves, right? Acceptance is, it's in alignment. It's already here. It's not something you have to find. It's already you, right? So healing is really clearing out the debris, the wounding out of the chakras. Bioenergy specifically focuses on the 7 main chakras of the body. And it's about clearing the wounding, the pains and the suffering out of the chakras so that they come back into alignment, so that they come back into their flow versus the rigidness or the stuckness. And so as they start to come back into the flow, then they start to bring more circulation. I like that. The circulation of energy and magic in our lives. And, you know, I like I said, I call it the flow state. And you know, when you're in, and that's just one of the chakras. Is the sacral chakra is the flow chakra. But just when one of your chakras comes into alignment, the impact that it has on your life is phenomenal, right? Now, what happens when all the 7 chakras come into alignment? Well, each one of the chakras affects a different area of your life. So just like the root chakra will affect your family, your structure, your finances, especially, your sacral chakra affects more like your fun, pleasure, joy, sexual energy. But it's also your connection with other people, your interactions with others. And then your solar plexus is more, I would say, more your work energy. So when the solar plexus is flowing, we tend to be like it's good that we work. You know, I don't think we shouldn't not work. We should work. We should just work at what brings us fulfillment, though, more than just like, I mean, it's okay to work at things that you don't love. You don't have to love your work, but it definitely helps if you enjoy your work. I think that you should enjoy it. I think if people are working at things that they hate, I don't think that's sustainable. You know, I don't think you can do that long term. At least I've never, a lot of the people I've treated who get ill and sick, you know, they're doing things long term that they probably shouldn't be doing. You know, it's okay to work at things that you don't like short time, but it's only when we keep doing unhealthy things for long periods of time that it's going to get the body sick. And the challenge, of course, is that we, like any of the chakras, if you take any of them, like say the brow chakra, if the brow chakra is blocked, you're not going to recognize that you're doing the same thing. You're not going to recognize patterns. You're just going to keep doing the patterns. So it's like a headless chicken, right? You keep running around in circles. So when the brow chakra is blocked, you're not going to recognize patterns. You're not going to see patterns, but you're just going to repeat patterns. So each one of the chakras has their different role to play. Just like with the throat chakra of course, is the expression center. And so when the energy is flowing and moving and circulating through the throat chakra, we tend to come into our best. We tend to, like, this is the vibration center, right? Like sound. When you think of the throat is the sound vibration. And the sound represents so much for us, right? Like it's your voice is your music, your voice is your creativity. We create with our words, we manifest with our words, we even raise and lower our energy with our own tone of our voice, right? Like when there's a confidence in our voice, we activate our creative powers. When we lack confidence in our voice, our creativity gets diminished. So you can say, oh, I'm going to start this new job. But if your confidence in your voice is diminished, it's like, you know, maybe you don't last very long at the new job. But if your like voice is strong, it's a reflection that the other lower chakras are working well. So as an example, if the solar plexus chakra is strong, you'll be in your fire energy, your confidence. And so when you're in your fire energy, then you'll hear that in someone's voice. You'll hear their confidence in their voice. And it's the energy of that confidence and expression is creation. So it's not that people give you permission to create. The more you're coming into alignment with yourself, as you come into your confidence and your power, your voice creates, because now it's in the right frequency. And so as it's in the right frequency, you're not actually even manifesting anything. It's more like a tuning fork. You're lining up, and now it comes into your field of vision. It comes into your field of hearing. It comes into your field of experience. So everything already exists. It's not that we're making things exist or manifesting anything. We're just simply tuning into the frequency in where we access something that we didn't have access to, And yeah, that's the natural cycles, right? So, I mean, I could go on forever. But I often think though, like, there are these natural cycles, as I say, that we go up and down with. If we can learn to trust these natural cycles, then some cycles your body is just saying, look, slow down and rest and go inwards. And then other cycles are telling you, hey, get out into the world and do something, And, the more we can listen and trust those cycles, I think in the one we're expressing, and in the other one we're integrating. Expression and integration, expression and integration. And these are natural cycles. And like I said, I think when you're aware of that, then even in a cycle where you feel like the difference between being stuck and being still, right? So being still does not mean that you're stuck. Stillness, I mentioned earlier, is the most beautiful state to be in, right? Like, to find stillness, right, is let me put it this: the mountain and I stood still until only the mountain remained. That stillness, right? That becoming one with what is, right? Like losing yourself in the emptiness, in the fullness, right? That stillness. But stuckness is more that you couldn't move even if you wanted to, right? But stillness, and I think it's important to clarify this really, because sometimes people feel like that they're stuck. But I sometimes look at people's energy, and their energy is actually flowing. It's just flowing very slowly. There's a stillness, as I said, about it. It's not that their energy can't move. There's nothing blocking their energy. It's just still. It's just like flowing very slowly. And I think a word that I've come to use in the last couple of years is percolating. The person's energy is perked, just like your coffee, right? Your coffee is percolating. It's not that it's not doing anything. It's not that nothing's happening. Something is happening, right? It looks like nothing's happening, right? Time is passing. It looks like nothing's happening, but something is happening. The coffee is percolating, And so sometimes that happens for us. Sometimes in your life, it might feel like you feel stuck or things are not moving. And, my friends, sometimes you're just percolating. Sometimes you're getting ready to flow and move and circulate and express and be creative. But if we confuse the slowing down, the percolating, and the integration, and we push ourselves in those downward cycles, then we bring ourselves out of the natural rhythm. We bring ourselves out of the natural rhythm. And in essence, we actually become stuck on the wrong cycle of energy, where we're pushing or forcing. It's like that idea, the pendulum. We're trying to make things happen, right? We're trying to push or force things to happen. But when you're in the flow, everything lines up. right? When you're in the flow, and we've all experienced that. And that's when your intuition is working and is connected, you've experienced that, in so many ways, where you're thinking things, you're wanting to connect with someone, and they reach out to you, and it all just flows and comes into alignment. And you get these moments that are showing you what it's like to be in alignment. And the more you have those moments, you realize when you're not in alignment, when you're feeling pushed or forced. And that's the society that we live in is being like shifting us out of that like intuitive stillness and that natural expression and creativity. And for a lot of people, just trying to keep up with your bills is enough to be juggling, to have to do things that you don't want to do. And so this massive shift, or I would say this paradigm shift that we're in right now, this massive paradigm shift is about us returning to the natural cycles of energy. It's about us coming back into harmony with nature, coming back into right relationship with the self, coming back into right relationship with nature, and coming back into right relationship with each other. And as we return back into these right relationships, I think that good health and well-being is just the positive side effect of it. As we're in our natural cycles of energy and the energy is flowing, good health and well-being is a given. We're supposed to be healthy. We're not supposed to be sick, my friends. Our natural state is to be healthy and well. Our natural state is to have energy and vitality, euphoria, bliss. It's not something for monks in an ashram, right? You're not just, look at a child, right? The child isn't meditating to find bliss. The child, even if the child gets upset, they always return back to just joy. That's their natural state. That's the sacral chakra. It's inside of you. It's not outside of you. It's not to be found in an ashram in India. The natural states are inside of us. When we stop acting upon ourselves with manipulation, force, and we just return to the natural self inside, the natural state of the body is peace. The natural state, peace. On a David Hawkins scale of consciousness, peace is at a level 600. It's the doorway of enlightenment. It's not that you have to transcend your body and mind to reach enlightenment. The natural state of your body when you stop acting upon it is peace. 600 on a David Hawkins scale of consciousness. Right? Boom. By getting out of the way. And so really, like, I'm always trying to, I think, help people understand what healing is and what we're doing with it, because sometimes people say, like, like with healing, that the healer is healing you. Just because people call themselves healer doesn't mean that they're doing the healing. To really understand the healer is acknowledging that we're all healers, that the healer is what we are in when we're in flow. The healer is what we are when we're not acting upon anything, when we're in our most natural state. The creativity, the healer, the manifester, the sage, the seer. This is the natural state of who we are. The intuitive, these are our natural states. And so the healer is just simply when you're connected. You're just connected to what is, to this energy that moves and circulates and vibrates through our cells and our bones and our being, this life force energy. And in so many ways, not only are we disconnected from nature, we've disconnected from our own energy, from our own energy source, right? And so as we I think that maybe, like, I think sometimes that shit has to get bad enough for people to realize they've given their health away. They've given the responsibility for their health away to too many other people, and they're not taking charge of their own health. And sometimes our health has to get bad enough for us to realize, I got to do something about my health. Because the more you put it in other people's, make your health other people's responsibility, the sicker you're going to get, right? And so healing is really just helping people putting their health back in their hands. That's what I say. We all have to put our health back in our hands, right? Using your hands for healing, putting your health back in your hands, taking responsibility for our own health. And I think as this new paradigm that is emerging, this new paradigm, I feel, is just simply looking to bring us into alignment, to bring us into authenticity with who we are and what we are. And I think that when people are living out of alignment, life gets more and more challenging. It gets louder. The messages get louder and louder. And I think that, I don't know, I feel like 10 years ago, you could have got away with doing things that didn't feel right. I think it's harder now for people to do it than ever before. I feel like the energies are increasing to such a degree that there's nowhere where you can hide the truth that's inside of yourself. If you're not living authentically, it's getting harder and harder to live with those parts of yourself. You're going to notice they're getting louder and louder. And I think we're seeing that in society right now. We're seeing like this massive polarization and everything from politics to governments to the medical to, even just Facebook friends. There's this massive polarization. And I think there's nowhere where you can hide. You have to deal with your shit. You have to go inwards to get outwards. You have to process the unhealed stuff inside yourself. And I think that's where we are as a collective, that we're all in this opportunity right now to deal with the shadow, to bring our wounding to light and to free and liberate ourselves. And what a journey. what a journey we are on, folks, right? Sometimes I think it's like a carnival or a circus, right? Like when we look at life, it's quite the circus, it's quite the carnival, right? And I think we have to acknowledge, like, too, how well you're doing, just to be alive and doing what you're doing and getting through everything and doing the work that you're doing on yourself, right? Like, because look, let's face it, you're being forced to work on yourself, whether you're doing it deliberately or whether it's being projected upon you. But I don't think that there's anyone that can hide from the transformation that this world is going through right now. I mean, you can maybe stick your head in the sand a little bit longer, but really, as a species, we're in our next stage of evolution, this transition from what in bioenergy we call it the transition from the solar plexus to the heart chakra, from power to love. That's the humanity shift that we're in, from power to love. And so that's why you can see, just as power is in this massive polarization right now. And that's why I was speaking about, whenever you feel that you're being manipulated, that's your power is being challenged. And so you've got to, your work right now is really coming back into your center, is listening to that intuition is guiding you right now. You got to tune in, you got to listen to it, and you got to come into alignment. And if you take care of that, your ailments, illness, sickness will take care of itself. I mean, I see this all the time for people. Like I'm just helping them bring their life into alignment, and their illness falls away. It's like it's not even there. Even stuff, sometimes people are dealing with stuff for 20 years and they're very much like, but my problem is a real problem. It's not just emotion, it's a real, and it's like, there's nothing that isn't emotion. Like, there's people say, but Michael, mine is a back pain from a car crash, it's a real problem. And I'm like, yeah, but if it happened 20 years ago, your back is completely regenerated and renewed itself multiple times. So why are you still have back pain after 20 years? And the truth is that there's always stuck emotion there. And as soon as you release the emotion, the back pain disappears. Why? Because the outer body is simply a reflection of the inner body. When we're in conflict inside, we're going to feel it in the outside. And the body is just our way of feeling our creations, right? Yeah. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Our talk was moving with the ups and downs of energy cycles. If you're interested in bioenergy, please check out my link tree. There's a list of all my events. I have a level 1 bioenergy workshop coming up in Vancouver on the 14th, 15th of October, which is, I guess, just 2 weeks away. And we have distant healing sessions or in-person sessions. We have a level 2 practitioner training course. That one's online. That's coming up in January, and registration for that is open at the moment. And thank you for tuning in to our talk tonight. I'm going to stop recording, but for those who are on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and see you next time round.